Hey guys, thanks for tuning in again. Happy New Year. I'm here with Ryan from Ryan's Pest Control, and he's going to answer a few questions and go over some information with us with regards to termite inspections. Ryan, so I guess to start off, people always ask, I recommend getting a WDO report, and people always ask, well, what is that?
Okay. If I may, just speaking from experience, I've done this since 1987. I have done over 40,000 WDORs is actually what they are, which means wood destroying organism report. So, like any other trade, whether it be electrical or plumbing, we are regulated by the state Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services for pest control. They mandate what is wood destroying.
Okay.
They mandate and license us with our own section of laws, and they also mandate the form. And that is the only thing, whenever there's a transfer of real estate, that can be reported on just that's called the Florida Statutes 13645 form. So,
okay.
What is it in layman's terms? Basically, the state of Florida considers termites, post beetles, wood rot, wood destroying organisms. Termites encompasses a group of them, not just termite, because there's different biology, and we'll get into that in a little bit.
Okay.
It's made on what is visible and accessible at the time of inspection. It does not constitute a warranty, so buyers cannot get confused with that,
Right.
Because you can do an inspection on Monday, and then on Wednesday they swarm.
Sure.
And there was nothing externally visible. It can be a tiny little pinhole that they can create in a few minutes.
Okay.
So people mustn't confuse it, with being some type of warranty, which it isn't, obviously.
Sure.
From your end, obviously, you advise your customer based on our findings to do their due diligence and make decisions based on the home inspection as well as the termite inspection.
Right. And then you mentioned, as far as that report goes, there's multiple types of termites?
Correct. So my favorite analysis is people say a termite's a termite. Well, yes, but there's specifically primarily the ones we deal with are drywood and subterranean.
Okay.
There are dampwood as well, but in 33 years, I've never had them in a structure.
Okay.
So never had to report on anything like that. So the biology is different. So both the fire and the flood will destroy your house, but they do it in different ways, and they're insured with separate policies.
Sure.
Right. So that same applies to subterranean and drywood. Subterranean, below ground, means that they have to have a moisture source. They have to go back to the ground. They are way more destructive than the drywoods. They will swarm in the spring and sometimes in the fall, and they shed their wings, and then they have to go back to the ground to start a new colony.
And when you say that they swarm, do they swarm within the same house, or is it possible for them to go from house to house when they swarm?
No, they have to go back to the ground. So the swarming is an indication of a mature colony. So when
Okay.
a colony reaches a certain maturity, they generate reproductives. So you got the queen, the workers, the soldiers, the nymphs, and then the reproductives, the aliens, the swarmers.
Okay.
So when the colony's big, they swarm out with the intent of starting a new colony.
Okay.
They're not very good flyers. They're delicious to ants and birds and everything else. So there's literally thousands of them that will swarm. However, they have to find a way to get back to the ground and start a colony. So they cannot swarm out of your house into your neighbor's house.
Okay. Gotcha.
Subterranean. Drywood, on the other hand, can. But they're much, much smaller. They do not require a moisture source. They live within the confinements of the wood. They extract sufficient moisture as they digest the wood. Colonies are way, way smaller, but it's much, much more of an intrusive result as being tent fugation.
So I assume you mentioned tent, so obviously there must be two different ways to battle these or treat them. Between the subterranean and the drywood, correct?
Correct. So if you tented a house that had both, because the drywood lives within the confinements of the wood, it's going to kill them regardless of where they are.
Okay.
If there was subterranean in the house at that time, it's going to kill them. But fumigation during the fact is the most deadly form of extermination that there is. After the fact, it's the safest because there's no residual. So it would kill whatever subterranean were in the house. The day the tent comes off, they're right back in.
Okay.
So those you have to treat with a chemical
Okay.
at the ground level, and we use their biology against them as far as products that they interact with and are non-detectable to them, and ultimately it will affect the whole colony.
Okay. So kind of two different treatments for, basically
Yeah, right.
two different species, basically.
Right, but as it pertains to the real estate, obviously these are things that would be reported on, and in the event we find stuff like that, obviously your customer can make decisions based on that in their due diligence period.
Okay.
You're spending on average, what's $244,000, the average price for a house in this area? Is that right?
Fair for median.
For goodness sakes, please, even $100 to have your house inspected and
Sure.
save yourself a costly issue down the road.
Absolutely.
You know, it's a no-brainer to me that people decide not to, whether it be me or any other qualified professional. You know?
Yeah, I always recommend that we do it. Again, I think the cost versus, the potential savings. At least, that's something I want to touch on as well with this report. Sometimes it's confusing because it's possible, obviously, to have a small amount of damage noted that's not necessarily a live activity. It could have been, houses, 40 years old, 50 years old. It's possible that at some point there was a small point of damage. Doesn't necessarily constitute, oh my gosh, do we really want to buy this house? Is it that bad, right?
Right.
So I think they said, well, it was noted that there was damage, but that doesn't necessarily constitute that there's activity, right?
Correct.
And I guess that's kind of, sometimes people get confused when they see the report as far as what does it actually mean.
Very confusing. We can thank the legislator for that. That had nothing to do with the termite industry. We had our input, but a lot of times they don't listen to it. So, yeah, the first question says, is there live? And the second question says, is there evidence of damage? So you can have evidence of damage, as you just described, without having live activity.
Right.
And it's confusing. People say, I've got termites. I'm like, no, there's evidence of damage from them. And there's not a day that doesn't go by. Let me rephrase that. There's rarely a day that doesn't go by that I don't find evidence.
Sure.
It's Florida, folks. You can take common sense approaches. I'm never complacent. I try and present a fair and accurate description if your customer's on hand of what they have. It's like a roof leak. You get a roof leak, you fix it. You
Sure.
get termites, you treat it. Just because you find evidence doesn't mean your house is falling down.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a stain on the sheathing in the attic.
Yeah.
You've got a brand new roof on it. I mean, yeah, there's a stain there. There'll always be a stain there, of course, unless you rip off the
Exactly.
sheathing and make that go away.
Exactly.
I had one recently too. There was some damage on one of the trusses in the attic, and again, you can't really get rid of it.
No.
I mean, there's no live activity, but again, it was still going to be noted as damage. So I think that's something that people kind of keep, I think,
Perspective
on, right? Yeah.
And a lot of times they say, well, what happens if this wall is all eat up? I cannot see through walls. I wish I
You're
could.
not Superman.
I wish I could. And then my standard answer to that is, well, what if there isn't? So you can go ahead and cut a hole in this wall, and there's no damage. Well, now you got damage because you got a hole in the wall.
Right.
So it's a darned if you do, darned if you don't situation. Remembering it's just what's visible and accessible on that day at that time.
And quickly here, I want to just finish up this part of our segment with once you do treat or inspect, I guess people always ask about a bond.
Yeah.
And can you cover that a little bit with us?
Sure, a bond is almost ambiguous anymore. It's more of a warranty, and that's the way the state makes us word it now. It's either repair coverage or service coverage, which means it's limited to retreatment. So anytime you do a complete WDO application, by law you are obligated to issue a warranty for 1 year.
Okay.
And most of them have the option to extend that beyond that initial year.
Okay.
In our case, whether it be subterranean or drywood.
Okay. So as part of this inspection, when they buy the house, if they do choose to have the WDO performed, they're basically covered for a year as far as a retreatment bond?
No, sir. No. Only if you make an application.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
So, in other words, if Mrs. Jones buys a house, we find a little bit of evidence. It's on the report. Mrs. Jones is comfortable with that. She closes.
Okay.
And then calls Ryan back and says, I want to protect it. We make an application. That's when the warranty will kick in.
Gotcha.
There's no warranty with WDORs. It's just an inspection.
So it's merely an inspection to let you know what's going on, if anything at all. And then if you choose to take it one step further, then that would be treatment and then issuing you a bond on an annual basis.
Correct.
And then every year you could keep that up for as long as you own the home for the rest of your life, correct? Okay.
In our case, varies
Okay.
from company to company.
Sure. In your case, they're covered.
Covered.
They can be covered for the rest of the time they own the home.
Yes.
That's great. Well, I wanted to thank you guys for tuning in on this episode. Check us out next time. I'm going to get with Ryan and we're going to cover some more kind of do's and don'ts as far as real estate, insects, termites and bugs and creepy crawlies. And we'll see you next time.